and what have you. But maybe just particularly what we wanted to use this opportunity for is to put on the record, because it will come up, we're quite sure in the propaganda that that there's a basis for water charging connected somehow to the use of water, and we want to basically, using hard facts, show that there's not really, that argument doesn't stand up. And so if and when the government does get around to introducing a water charge, it is purely a taxation on water, and it is not for any other reason that you could possibly do it. Sorry, that's a copy of their submission. Just to begin with the point that there's talk of spending 500 million on having water meters fitted to in the order of 2 million houses. And we would start off by saying that 500 million could be used much more effectively to fix other problems, and the savings will be much more dramatic in terms of saving water. And again, we just want to clarify that this is basically, it's another stealth tax, and we've been running campaigns against stealth taxes for quite a while, and we've obviously every intention of running a campaign against this stealth tax. Just as you often do in this country, you compare yourself with the neighbouring island in terms of water usage and water figures. In Britain, particularly, the reports are generally for England and Wales, where you've had metering and charging for water now for quite a long time. I've given the figure there for litres per head per day, and then I've given the figure for the Greater Dublin area, litres per head per day. I've given the reference reports and what have you, and they're very similar. The numbers are, they're within a couple of percent of each other in reality. So in Britain, where we already have charging, and in Ireland where we don't have, the usage is virtually the same. So again, but we're not saying that metering will have no effect, and we genuinely had a look at these numbers to see, well, what effect would metering have, and we've read some of the reports in England and what have you, and the number we would be suggesting is that metering will have the effect of saving 6% of water. And of course, that's not to be sneezed at, but it's 6% of the domestic water use, so it's 6% of 16%, which is just under 1% of the total water use. That's what you're looking at saving if you introduce metering right around the country. And I'd be absolutely confident that come back here in 20 years' time and those numbers will stand up. And it's just to be clear about that if anyone thinks they're going to, fix the water problem in this country by metering, you will not, or anything of the sort. As the figure was just given there by Sean, and is correct, the leakage in the country is 36%. That breaks out in the Dublin area, the Greater Dublin area, which includes Wicklow, Kildare, Meath, at 30%, and the rest of the country, and there's a graph given there, which is from a recent report, in the order of 43-44%, which is the leakage around the country, as high as 58% in Roscommon. So the issue in the Irish water system is leakage. Now that is where Dublin was at when they started the programme in the Dublin area in '96. That was the leakage level in the Dublin area. And in the years since then, they've managed to get it down to 30%. So from 42.3-43% down to 30%. In other words, virtually the total domestic usage, that's how much they've saved by going after a leakage problem. And they're not finished yet. World class for leakages, world class will be 16%. But you must bear in mind, in some parts of the world, obviously water is extremely valuable and it's extremely expensive to generate. There's another report which suggests that for Ireland, the target should be, let's say, based on what's economical, will be 20% leakage will be classes. Going after anything more than 20% leakage in Ireland, in urban areas, it will be considered uneconomical, and in rural areas 25%. So even if you accept those relatively modest targets, we've still a hell of a distance to go to get from, you've virtually 20% of a gap between the current leakage outside of Dublin and that target figure. And that's really where your problem is, and that's where the resources really should be concentrated. Now, we go on to give, quite concrete examples. I mean, I've given you 3 examples here. Number 1 example spells out what the actual effect of the leakage programs has been. Actual effect, not what I say, it's what actually has been reported and what has been proven. And if you accept that metering, when you compare the Irish figures to the UK figures, might save you 6%, well, if you fix the leaks and bring it down to the modest target of 20% leaks in urban areas, 25% in rural areas, you will get 24 times the effect of metering. So that's the scale of the difference you're talking about. And there is a lot of investment required for that. The leakage program nationally for 3 years, 97, 98, 99, was 280 million. So the 500 million that's been talked about for metering would run that program for 6 years. And that program is now generally concentrated outside of the Dublin area. The recent announcement of the Vartry Tunnel project, which is a tunnel up in the Wicklow Mountains that's there since the 1860s, which is everyone knows, well not everyone knows, but people in the business know has a hell of a leak in it. But otherwise, the main focus of that project will be outside the Dublin area. And we would say that's what that money should be used for. And there's been some very good work done in Wexford and Limerick, County Limerick in particular, in recent years. And they've shown the way, to be honest. They've got there, to Limerick County, I'd say, I spoke to the senior engineer there last week just to make sure I had all the facts straight. And they've got their wastage down to 30%. But Roscommon is still licking up around twice that. So, there's parts of the country really who need to take the lead from other parts when it comes to this, but they need money. I mean, all this costs money. So rather than wasting, I won't say wasting, but rather than using up 500 million euros to put in meters all over the place, that money should be invested into these programs. I've just given the second example I've given there is, which again, it wouldn't be common knowledge, but I've checked around a number of the councils, and this is work that goes on quietly in the background all the time. As I said, I was on South Dublin for 5 years, so I know what goes on there. Their leakage unit, which is only 4 people, they're especially trained guys, but particularly they go out on a Thursday nights when it's very quiet. All the taps should be off inside in the house and what have you, and they just go along and pop the cover over the valves, and they can actually do quite an amount of, quite a distance in one night, and they can find out very quickly where there's any water use within an area. And then the rest of the week is spent chasing that up in terms of knocking back the houses and wondering what's happening here and whatever. That's what South Dublin, the kind of level of detail they're into. But they're actually doing the same thing in Limerick, by the way. So these are existing units that are doing this work. And put it this way, any leaks that you'll find with a meter, these guys will find for you. And I've given the figure there. Those people in South Dublin told me that there's been 300 leaks recorded in South Dublin. And we got the question asked of the council, there's only been 19 notifications given out under the Act. And I'm just pointing out there that there is an Act and there is legislation around this existing. So if somebody can tell you there's a leak in a domestic premises, well, there's legislation there which allows you to follow it up. To be quite honest about it, it doesn't appear to be getting used. That said, when I spoke to the engineer in Limerick last week, he says that the minute you tell people there's a leak, they go and fix it. He says, so generally you don't need to resort to this sort of thing. I suppose that just underlines the point that people are quite conscious of water and water use and are not inclined towards wasting it. Just a third example I've given is just something that has come up, often. Just people bring it up and it gets talked about, this whole question of flushing toilets and the waste of water in toilets and all that. So just to bring that out. And by the way, you can name me something else you'd like to, and we can go and find the figures for that, But there was just a comparison between Denmark, where there's been quite a conscious program on this since the 90s, and England, where there hasn't really been. And there's the gap between the two is the equivalent of 12% of all the water use. So, for instance, just on that one program alone, you'll save twice the amount that meters are going to save you. So it just shows, and really just brings it out.
This has been the daily household consumption. Could you give us as to where you actually scoped that figure from? People conserving water if there isn't a connection between consumption
and particularly, first of all, with the conservation question about how do you encourage the use of water, the conservation of water. What the research clearly bears out, by the way, is that by and large water use is lifestyle driven, as in standard of living driven, more so than almost anything else. I mean, if you look at these graphs I've given here for Denmark and Britain, the outdoor use is tiny. There's just this notion that there's huge amounts of water getting used for watering gardens and washing cars and stuff like that there. Actually, there's not. The vast bulk of water use in a house is for the dishwasher, the clothes washer, the washing of, obviously bathing and showers and just the general use. And it's driven very much by a standard of living almost. And it's very, the reason why the figures for Ireland and Britain are so similar, that's why there isn't actually a huge waste of water going on in this country. There's obviously some waste of water, but it's quite small. And so, there's a notion there that there's a big prize in relation to that. The answer is the research bears out there isn't. And and what's been, for instance, in the planners even across Europe plan on the basis that water usage is going up, not going down, because of the lifestyle, because of the the amount of the cost of water to be borne. Well, the way it's been borne now, Chairperson, is the short answer from the taxes we pay. We all pay that and lots of different taxes, and well, I for one would like to get something. I'd like to see something fairly tangible back for it, and start off with taking water. So we would no change to the current situation. To be honest, to the engineers out in the field, domestic metering is the least of their worries. There are much bigger fish to fry around the country than that.
Question down the lifestyle choices of increasing the water. I know I took a decision when I measured the water from the dishwasher going out. We decided to do away with the dishwasher and went back to the old way. And there was an argument there because I researched it quite, but I actually measured the water coming out of the dishwasher, so there was a substantial saving by going back to the old mechanism of washing at the sink. And it's actually, I know the kids didn't agree with that kind of proposal because they took it part of their thing. But just on the how
could we do to dampen down lifestyle choices? If we go back to the figure that 1/3 of all potable water generated by the local authorities in this country is lost, or 1/6 of all that water is used for domestic use, so there's twice as much actually lost than is used for domestic purposes. I would be focusing on that rather than going home and trying to tell Lisa and my house that we're getting rid of the dishwasher, which we only got a few years ago, because I know what the answer would be. And the two girls, when it comes to how long they spend in the shower, not a chance. I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't even bring up the discussion in the house, to be honest. So, and I don't think there's really a whole lot of point in doing that, because the numbers just completely explain where we should be focused in terms of what all of us should be doing about it. And the general trend, as I said, is up. It's very gradual, the rise in the use. And as I said, it's being compensated for by new appliances and stuff, which are more efficient in terms of water and everything else. So it is settling out as a figure, the amount of water used. The use of wells for domestic use is really a backward step if it's happening. It is happening, and I know there's a small amount of it happening, but in general it's not even viable. I mean, by the time you have the water, pump it and treat it, it doesn't make much sense. It makes a certain amount of sense on a farm where you don't have to treat the water, you just feed it straight to the cattle. And so on certain big farms, maybe it makes some sense there. I was the chief engineer of the biggest soft drinks plant in the country for 11 years, and we had a borehole, found an 8,000 gallon an hour supply in 1991. In this country, I mean, we have lots of water coming out of the sky all the time, so there's no reason why everybody can't be on the public supply, to be honest, provided they can, the group water schemes and everything else, and that should definitely be encouraged. Just on the point that Deputy Bannon brought up about how do you detect leaks out in the countryside? Now, again, I spoke to the chief engineer in Limerick last week for a good while on the phone, and like he says, they have 10,000 industrial customers, including farms, right? And then they have 40,000 domestic customers, and it is the domestic we're talking about. And it is even the question of that there should be no flow. I mean, if you turn on a tap, you can hear the sound changes as you turn it up. Everybody would know that. So the lads are trained. They're certified, by the way. These guys aren't just a question of going out with sound equipment. They have to do courses and what have you. And it's a question of they know by what they're listening to that's a drip and tap or it's an enormous leak somewhere, and they can tell the difference, and they record that, and then they go back and they do something about it. And it's been done in Limerick County. That was the point. So if it can be done in County Limerick, I'm sure it can be done all over the country. But I know what you're saying. I mean,
I've definitely changed my position on this. My original position would have been that we go out there, we spend €500 million on meters, and we save an awful lot of money. But having listened to this man here, Mick, and a few other people, it seems that there are bigger priorities. If there is €500 million or €1 billion there, which some people are suggesting, that we should definitely spend it without doubt on that first. Also in relation to the whole idea the polluter pays, I was evangelic when it came to that whole concept at one stage. I amn't anymore, and the reason why would be as a result of our experience with the whole waste that comes from your house, in other words, what goes into your rubbish bin. I would have been a big fan of the whole theory that, well, look at the more, if you charge people for it, they'll cut down on the amount they produce. But
thank you, Mr. Murphy.
The question for me there is on district metering, and yeah, it is actually, again, the methods of finding leaks be honest, are pretty straightforward. It's the least of, it's not hard at all actually to find the leaks. The by far and away the bigger problem is fixing them and how to even get at someone to fix them. You can imagine you're around the city centre of Dublin and there's a pipe leak, and well, it's not that simple to go in and do something about it. How councils generally, again to use the example of Limerick, I know South Dublin is the same thing. And water metering, by the way, is an old technology and very precise, and it's not hard to do, to be honest. It's one of the easiest things to meter, so they know exactly how much is coming into the system. And then they put meters on. It is district metering. So I think they said last week in the case of Limerick, it's around 35 to break out the county into 35 legs, let's say, and they meter each one of them. So they know all of them should add up to the first one, which they would generally do. And then they know what's on each leg, so the agriculture and what have you, and that's all metered. And then they take that off the district meter, and they know how much domestic, and then quickly work out that one other of the districts is way out of kilter. There must be a big leak down there somewhere. And that's how they know where to go start looking in the first instance, before they even get down to looking for domestic leaks. They can quite, using district metering, they can find and have found where the really big leaks are in the systems. That's what's been going on around Dublin since the mid-90s. That's how they've been finding the big leaks, and that's why you see roadworks all over the place every now and again digging them up, Up to and including, as I said, up to recently enough in Dublin, there was actually wooden pipes. Old medieval wooden pipes still in use around Dublin, believe it or not, and they've managed to replace all that in time. So the answer to your question is, there is a way of going about this. It's in engineering terms not difficult, to be honest, right? And it's almost entirely actually a matter of resources. And during the boom, this wouldn't have been the tip-top priority around the country. But around Dublin it was actually, because there was a shortage of water. They're quite restricted, and as we now know, there's a debate going on about where they're going to get water if the city becomes much bigger. But how they fixed that problem in the past 15 years was how all the recent development was catered for was they went out and they fixed leaks. And to be honest, they knew they could do that. They had 42.3%, they have it down to 30, and there isn't a water problem as such. Despite all the development in Dublin in the last 15 years, there isn't really a water crisis as such. There has been.
It should not be privatised. Okay, absolutely. For us, this is an absolutely critical issue, because essential services of that nature for us, like water, is essential for people to survive. Under no circumstance should that be under private control, or should be an issue that is basically driven by profit. If it were, then I think we're into another ball game. In which there would be all sorts of consequences that would not be
fully convinced yet about where we go. I'm like Deputy Fleming, I've gone every and any way on this, but I've always thought that metering, as well as being looking at leaks, it would be a conservation measure, obviously, which I think I hear children in school talking about in the next generation, which is great. But I've always wondered, why would we charge the same if we had any charges?
Maybe just on the point about showers and pump showers and stuff, one thing you learn very quickly with water is don't mix up flow rate with pressure. And we're talking about flow rate here. So for instance, you see somebody using a power hose and you think there's a huge amount of water being used. In actual fact, there's not. So try and fill a bucket with a power hose and see how long it takes, So some of this stuff with the likes of new showers and stuff is to conserve water. So they just need it, so in other words, it's smaller jets, higher pressure, less water. And there are some good technologies around all that, in terms of modern appliances and people being aware of what they're buying and that kind of thing. That's good, and it's one of the things you can do in terms of, let's say, what we inside the house on the whole question. We mentioned in that report there about the whole question of cisterns and dual flush, and the fact that it is still not in the building codes in this country. Something that Joe Higgins loves reminding people about. After the water charges campaign, and then he got elected in '97, and he kept bringing it up, and it's still not there. The building boom has happened there and gone in the meantime, and there's still no building code in Ireland which says that you have to fit. Now, it is written into a lot of planning permissions. It is in some county development plans, but there is no national directive about this, and there should be. There should be, without a question or doubt about it, there should be. Should be very clear. That said, mind you, that's pretty much the standard now anyway. If you go to buy a toilet, that's what you're going to get. I don't think there's not much else on the market at the moment. Obviously, the point about public-private partnerships and the privatisation of water. As a general comment, for such a small country with such a plentiful supply of water, we certainly make a meal out of the whole thing. We really do. We make a huge big task out of something that isn't that difficult to do. In counties like Roscommon and Leitrim, well, to be honest, there should be central funding to help out in those counties. They are very sparsely populated, and there's huge water losses in them, and so that's where the state should step in. Just on a general